Hi, everyone. Alan Shields here, Chief of Police for the town. Welcome. We are 10-8 and in service to all of you, which means we're here to make people's lives better by safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. We're going to cover some outreach. We're going to cover our blotter like we do each episode. We're going to talk about schools a little bit more. Going to cover some speeding issues, and then we're going to talk about phishing. And if you think phishing is putting the pole in the water, you need to stay tuned till the end because you may be a victim if you don't know what phishing is. All right, so first let's move on to some outreach and what you can do to make the community better. And so we've got a great opportunity here through our local roadway safety plan where you can jump on, you can put a box, you can drop a pin, you can tell us in the community what it is that you want to be fixed in town. If you have an idea of what's unsafe, let us know where we should focus our time and energy, and we will do what we can to make it better from an engineering standpoint. We always talk about the 3 E's of traffic safety. The first one is engineering. The second one is education, which is what we do on this show and in other formats. And the third is enforcement. That's our officers out there writing citations, giving warnings, and making stops. The engineering solution is by far the longer lasting, better solution. So this is where our partner, Andy Dillard, the transportation manager, comes in. And if you love having low traffic accident rates in town, it is directly related to him and his department. This is a live show. So if you have questions during the show, go ahead and throw them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them. And I'd say if you have a question, I would ask it earlier rather than later. Don't try to sneak it in under the wire at the end. I would rather see it come in a little early. All right. So if you want to see us in person, we'll be out at Coffee with the Cops. We're going to be doing a Special Olympics fundraiser June 4th. From 10 to noon in front of the Lunardi's Market. And we're going to be on the north entrance there at 345 Railroad Avenue. So we'll be right, if you know Wednesdays, it's where the person hangs out when they're cutting knives. So we'll be right over there. And this is a good opportunity to help us support the Special Olympics. Any donation is we're grateful for. The money goes directly to the athletes and allows them the opportunity to compete and perform. It also provides them with well check and wellness appointments. All right, well, let's talk about crime. So this is not a good week for crime. CommunityCrimeApp.com. You can always stay up to date on anything that is crime related in town. And if you want, you can also set up a little alert area and you can receive alerts as they are uploaded, or you can do a daily digest version. All right, May 23rd through the 29th, we did have a violent crime. So we were very, very low. We average about 1 violent crime every other week. We usually go anywhere between 20 and 30 violent crimes a year. So it is very rare. We did have an aggravated assault that stemmed from a domestic dispute, which is what we would call a rolling domestic, where the dispute is taking place in the car on the roadway, which makes it even more hazardous or dangerous to the people that are in the car. And a male had choked a female over an argument in the vehicle. The male was booked for assault with a deadly weapon and felony domestic battery. And then for our non-violent crime, we had 3 thefts and a vehicle theft. We had a catalytic converter theft on on Cerro Court, and we're working leads in that case. On the 26th, we had a wallet theft from a person who was shopping in Costco. And then the credit cards were later used in a nearby city. On the 29th, we had a vehicle that was stolen off Valley Creek Place, and it was discovered up in Benicia. So we recovered it. We actually brought the car back here first. We collected DNA samples on it, and we're hoping that will come back and prove fruitful. I did want to talk about the wallet theft from the purse, and then I'll talk about domestics as well. So the wallet theft from the purse, we've covered it on the show before. But if you go into a store with a backpack, a purse, a satchel, a fanny pack, whatever it is, we always suggest leaving it on your person. That's the safest place for it to be. If you have to leave it in your cart, make sure it's zipped up and sewn up, and then also make sure that it's somehow affixed to the cart. If you can at all, leave that purse, leave that bag, leave it in the car. So if you've got a trunk prior to your destination, we recommend just putting it in the trunk, closing the trunk, finishing your drive, parking, so that there's nothing visible in your car, and then you simply walk into the store, maybe with your phone, and maybe you just slip a couple of credit cards in the back, sort of thing. And that's all you have, and this is in your pocket, and you will be well poised to not be a victim of theft. And so that is our general recommendation for shopping safety. And we do see it all the time at our larger stores, ones where people can be distracted. So a lot of times when you're grocery shopping or you're spending a lot of your attention elsewhere, I shop around town. I see it too frequently. And frankly, if I was in uniform, I would tell someone, hey, your purse is there. If I were a thief, I would know this. Unfortunately, if I'm in jeans and a t-shirt, it just looks creepy if I go up to a lady and say, hey, move your purse. So I try to stay away from that one. On the domestic, the rolling domestic, and in reviewing domestic disputes, and not specific to this one, but I think the fact that we had a domestic violence case come up, it serves as a reminder. And again, not specific to this case, but just some general advice on looking out for one another. Domestic violence is an underreported crime. It happens fairly, well, I don't want to say it happens often, but when it does happen, it's not reported all the time. It happens, and we know that there's a cycle to it. We know that either side may get very upset. Maybe it's a dispute where there's just an argument. Maybe there's violence. Cooler heads prevail in the end, things calm down, but we know what happens is as it comes back to the violence side, the violence may ratchet up and get worse. And we've seen very, very bad domestic violence cases throughout the town, throughout the county. And one of the things, when it gets to the point where it's very, very bad, we know that there were preceding events. There were domestic violence events that took place weeks, months, and sometimes even years prior to the big event. So what I would say is, if you're looking out for your friends, please make sure that they get help. If it is domestic violence, we would encourage you to report it to the police. It would be, our typical advice is call us early and often. We use that for everything, and I think domestic violence certainly falls into that. So if you are a victim of domestic violence, we would ask that you do make the report. You can reach out to us, friends, family member, but please reach out to someone and make sure that gets reported so that that we can get you the help that you need. All right, so on to traffic accidents. So crime, we didn't do so good. Traffic accidents, you are crushing it, not literally. We had one reported traffic collision and injury collision on Green Valley Road in Blemmer. And I do want to remind you that what we report on the show here is the reported collisions, the one where we actually go out and we write a report on it. If there's a fender bender and you and the other party exchange information, we don't necessarily write reports for all of those. If there's a dispute, if there's a law violation like drunk driving, hit and run, we take reports on those. And if there's injuries, we take reports on those as well. So this isn't an all-inclusive list, but it's just to generally show you where those collisions are occurring. Thankfully, this one happened to not be in our downtown area, which is where we typically tend to see them. All right, so let's talk about what we're doing in schools here. As you know, there were some events that have been taking place all over the U.S. These active events have been trending up, and those are from statistics that are reported through to the FBI on active shooter events, but they are still very, very rare events, and it may be relevant today, and it may be on the forefront in the news and in everyone's minds today. But what I want everybody to understand is that your police department and your school district, we do work together. We've been doing this for years and years, decades actually at this point, on implementing policies, and sometimes, and I won't speak for the school, but sometimes structural changes. We, as the police, we do offer some services in the way of that. So we have, at the request of the school districts and the individual private schools, we've reviewed site plans. So if there's a site security plan, we'll review those for obvious deficiencies and go over those. We do active threat training, where we will go and typically once a year, our whole department will go through and we will review a campus, and we'll go through how to basically fulfill two objectives. One is to stop the killing, which is to stop the person from creating harm. And then the next one is to stop the dying. And on that, we work hard to train ourselves in the tactics behind tactical medicine. We also work with our fire department here. And so how can we safely deploy fire personnel into schools and make sure that we're getting kids or anyone to safety. In addition to that, we try to pay attention to the large events. If you'll notice, we're at most football games, most basketball games, events where there's large crowds. Me growing up playing baseball, I was like, why aren't we at the baseball games? But for the 12 people that were watching, it didn't quite break the same as the football games. But the bottom line is, and it's a little bit of a joke, but what we do is we communicate with the individual school sites, and if they request, based on the crowd size, an officer, we typically, and I don't know that we've not been able to do it, but we typically will have at least one officer at some of these events. To include the graduations coming up, we've got a middle school graduation. I'll actually be working that one today as soon as I'm done here, and we've got officers at the other middle school graduation, and then tomorrow we have a couple more. And so we have officers at those as well as the high school graduation. So if a school requests an officer, we do our best to fulfill that request and accommodate that. In addition, you'll actually see us out, and this is kind of a little shot for us. You'll see us out doing recess with the cops and or just driving by. There's a lower left there. That's actually not a recess with the cops. That's a happy 50th birthday for Janet Wolford over at San Ramon Valley High, longtime leadership teacher there. And that was just us showing our support for her with the cop car there. But you can see we're just out playing with the kids, hanging out. And what we hope is that having a sporadic increased presence at the schools will act as a deterrence for people wishing to do harm. They need to know that we're connected to our schools and that we're at our schools frequently so that there is not that opportunity. All right. So let's talk about speeding on Camino Tassajara again. So we do have speeding on Camino Tassajara. We've got poor driving in our downtown area. We're continuing to go out there. In fact, our traffic officer was in here today, and he was out there earlier today, and I think he wrote another 5 or 6 citations and made, about that plus another half a dozen stops for warnings. So there is a lot of enforcement that's going on. So what I would ask is if you could please let people know, slow down. It seems like the warnings aren't working, so we are in giving out citations, and so our officers are out there. So please, I would rather be in the engineering mode. I would much rather be in the education of saying, please don't speed. That causes accidents. Hanging out on your cell phone causes accidents. Please don't do that. But certainly we will write every ticket needed in order to make sure that we don't have those horrific accidents. And when my traffic officer's coming in saying he's writing tickets for 60 and 70 miles an hour down Camino Tassajara, that is an egregious speeding violation. It's very bad. And so certainly we're going to keep out doing the enforcement until we see a change in behavior. Once a change in behavior happens, that's when we focus somewhere else. So until we see a change, we're going to focus on those areas where we know that those violations are occurring and accidents are occurring. So please, I think they say repetition will make it sink in. Please, if you take nothing away from today, please tell people to slow down. All right, Yuri has a question. Does Costco have surveillance videos? Did they capture the theft? So Costco does have surveillance videos throughout the store. They also have good surveillance videos in the parking lot. Sometimes they are able to capture it, and their security actually does a good job at assisting us in reviewing all of that. So a lot of times by the time we get there or we get the report, they've already found and backtracked where that person was. I don't know in this specific case, but I do know that that is something that we do even on a follow-up end is we work the cameras that they have there. In fact, most of our stores in town have cameras, and many of our lots have cameras as well. All right, and then Gary, and it was Gary. I totally faded on your name last week, and so I apologize. But Gary, I think, was the first one, and then a bunch of people jumped on as far as the speeding on Camino Tass. So I appreciate you pointing it out. And what was great about Gary was he gave me a location and a very specific time, direction of travel. So my traffic officer said, okay, I know right where I can monitor that. And he's got 3 or 4 different spots along Camino Tassajara that he can monitor it, and that's where he goes. So Gary, when you give such good detailed information like that on how we can work to solve the problem, it makes our job really, really easy. If we just get a blanket, they're speeding on Camino Tassajara all the time, which may very well be true. It doesn't help us focus our patrols. So Gary says, I appreciate your team taking action at 6 a.m. Are you going to continue working it? Yeah, we're going to continue working it. So we continue to work problems until there's a change in behavior. And if that doesn't seem to work, then often what you'll see is you'll see us engage our engineering partners down the hall. Safeway heading east on Camino Tass. There are often excessive at Park Haven. This happens during all hours. Yeah, so Gary, that's a good point. We do have some of that, but we also work with CHP, and CHP Chris Sherry, he's the captain that oversees the Dublin division. He is out that way, and he does help us work to patrol those areas. We have to be careful having us educate other drivers. Okay, let me clean that one up, Gary. Sadly, it could elevate into something other than civil. Okay, so Gary, let me clean up the educate. What I don't want is if someone out there sees someone speeding, for you to hold your hands up, roll the window down, start yelling at drivers. Don't do that. What I'm asking is tell your friends during non-violation times, hey, I want to let you know that I'm seeing the cops out there, and I watched this show called 10-8, and they're telling us that they're writing tickets out there. So, man, avoid that ticket. Please slow down. So I'm asking you to educate your friend group. And the hope is that the people that watch the show, you do tell 5 people that tell 5 people that tell 5 people, and hopefully we can get the word out to a lot of people that way. So, Gary, thanks for helping me clear that one up, because that was not a good way for me to put that. I did want to point out, again, we've got Homeland Security has a booklet out, or FEMA rather, has a booklet out there that you can download, and it has a bunch of checklists on it. And here's an example. It has they're all in alphabetical order, but it'll have 3 main sections in it. It's what you can do to prepare now, how you can survive during an event, and how to be safe after. And they're for natural events. They're for unplanned events. They're for earthquakes. I think there was one for an avalanche. We're not going to get one here, but it's a very good checklist. I would download it. I would read it. It would probably front to back maybe take you 15 minutes to actually review it, and then stuff it in a drawer. And if there's tips that you pull out of there that you can do to prepare, then go ahead and do that. So Gary's asking about the area east on Camino Tass leaving Safeway. So it does split at times. The bottom line is it's a blended jurisdiction. There's a good portion that is ours, but as you move down the road, one direction becomes ours, one becomes CHP's, and then as you move further down towards the soccer complex, that all becomes CHP from there. So the deal is we overlap, they overlap, and the idea is that no section of roadway is left uncovered, and so that is the goal behind that. Again, on the what do we do for schools, and I mentioned this last week, but I want to show it again. We do a run, hide, fight training. Not only do we do this for schools, but we'll do this for businesses. We'll do this for community groups. This is just very good general advice on how to handle an active event. You could be shopping, right, and something happens, and this training is good. And it's very simple. We cover it in about 30 minutes to an hour. Answer any questions. We don't go over the top. It's not meant to scare people. It's just meant to get people to think about action instead of inaction, and have a plan tucked away in the back of your head. Go through this and then frankly move on. We also cover it in our Citizens Academy now. We've added it to there. All right. So Kimberly, you know what? Kimberly, that's an excellent idea. Let me write that one down. So Kimberly says use Nextdoor. And how about we use Nextdoor and Facebook? I'll tell you this though. Last time we had so Kimberly's saying, throw out some social media posts on this Camino Tass and speeding so that people are aware. That's a great idea. We are going to do that. But I will say this. I did it one time on Facebook because we had been asking people, please slow down. We've been ratcheting up enforcement. And we took a picture of a car that had been pulled over, and we took a picture of some of the citations kind of stacked up, and saying that we did a joint enforcement with CHP, and there were, I think we wrote like 15 tickets, and CHP wrote a bunch of tickets, and I got a bunch of negative feedback on that. It was like, why are you out just trying to earn money and do this? And so we are going to do it, but we're going to be careful in how we message it. And then to kind of dispel the rumor, we get very, very little money as part of our overall budget. It's far less than 1% now from citations. So it is not a way to generate revenue. We do it truly to change behavior and reduce accidents. That's all we're trying to do. All right, Vicky jumped on. Vicky Kalik, so she's a Baldwin staffer over at John Baldwin. So just jumped on, and thank you for being present at our sites this weekend, school sites. A lot of parents felt safe and comfort with your officers there. Nice to meet Jason in person. Thank you again. Yeah, it's good to have Jason out and about. And honestly, that's why we love working here so much. All the officers, we send them out to all the schools, and we would come back and kind of have a debrief on how it went. And everybody was like, wow, that was amazing. It was great. I was getting so many high fives and thank yous, and actually seeing if I can find a little gift that I had here. There it is. And so it's reinvigorating for the officers too. And it builds some spirit. But I kind of want to share something. We were at the Recess with the Cops. In fact, it was this one in the upper left where you can see me up there. Well, we were at that Recess with the Cops, and one of the little girls had come up and given me this shell. And she said, I just want you to have this gift for being a special person to us. And I was like, holy smokes. I was really taken aback by that. Just a very kind gesture. And it just reminds me that there are so many wonderful kids in this community that are going to grow up to be our future leaders. And we have a job to take care of them, and that's what we do. So Vicky, good. We're happy to be out there. We love coming out to the schools and being present with all the kids. All right. Let's move on to final thoughts. So phishing, we're talking not about putting your pole in the water, but we're talking about people that use an email as their pole, and they try to stick the pole into your email address. And so what they'll do is they'll cast out a bunch of emails, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to bait you into either clicking something in that email or engaging with them. And we've talked about it on the show before, but what they will try to do is create a sense of urgency, and then they will also pretend to have some authority or have they'll pretend to be someone with a positive reputation. And so in this case, and this is kind of funny, so yesterday I was getting a bunch of emails back saying, hey, Chief, did you need me? Did you need something? What's going on? And what happened is everybody was getting an email that said it was from Chief of Police Alan Shields. And I want to point out a couple of things if you can look into the left side of this. The first part is our warning. So if I sent an email from my Danville email address to another Danville email address, that warning isn't going to be there because the warning reads, caution, this email was not sent from Danville staff. And then it gives a call to action to anyone receiving it. It says this email originated from outside of the town and was not sent from a town staff member, ! Do not click on links or open attachments unless you recognize the sender and know the content is safe. So we've crafted a message right on the email that anything that comes from outside of our organization, we're giving people a banner that says, look, danger, danger. And then we give them the positive steps of what not to do. Now look at the sense of urgency. So they've pretended to be me. Now the sense of urgency is, hi, how is your schedule like today? I'm heading for a meeting, but I am excellent with emails if that works. I want you to discreetly handle a project for me. So they're already identifying that they're going to use unusual methods, right? Like that would not be how we would handle a project. A lot of it would be face-to-face meetings. So they're really working hard, and they're making it so they can communicate back and forth over email. So if the person were to respond and say, hey, how can I help? Well, they're going to get an email back that says, I'm in a meeting, I can't call, and they're going to try to do something there. And we've had it where there have been attempts to send money, to pay a bill, to pay a vendor, those sort of things. And so here's what we recommend is don't ever give your username or password out. Don't click on content in unsolicited emails. So if it's an email that's from the outside or from someone that you're not aware of, do not click on things that are in there. And then really closely look at an email. If you're reading the email, fine. If you're tempted to click on something or take an action to it, really examine the email. You can look at the email address and see, like in this particular case where it says Chief of Police Alan Shields, the email address was actually, abc123@gmail.com. Well, I don't have that email address. That's clearly a bogus email. And then look at spelling and formatting and just see if there's some weird, there, like in this case, there's no signature block or anything like that. Be wary of any downloads, and make sure you check the URL. And that's if there's a click on this link in there, you can just take your mouse and you can kind of hover over the link. And what'll happen is if it says click here and that's the link, it'll actually bring up that URL, which is the www.clickhere.com address. And so really take a look at that. All else fails, especially if it's like a financial institution, if they're purporting to be your bank, just access your account the normal way. Don't do it through the email. There's no reason to click through the email. You can access the information directly from your bank, or you can call them. And then if you haven't done this already, it's one of our strongest recommendations is get two-factor authentication. So if you're accessing on your phone, a bank account, personal accounts, email accounts, those sort of things, have two-factor authentication. Normally you enter a username, then a password. Two-factor authentication will then send you a confirmation code, or you'll have to use an authenticator app in order to access. So it provides two separate barriers for accessing your account. All right, I'm going to check the chat, see if there's any questions on the phishing or any of that. I don't see any. All right, another comment about Camino Task being a speedway. Anita, I appreciate that. The phishing emails. So Yuri is really good observation here. The phishing emails have gotten really good, and they are able to mimic many features of a real email. And it's actually really easy. A lot of times what you'll see what they'll do is they will take a legitimate email and cut it out and just paste it into the new email, or they'll paste the parts to make it look like it's a legitimate Office 365 email. But if you get an email from Office 365 saying, type your password in here, give us your username, that sort of thing, that's not usually what you will get unsolicited. So Yuri, a good example. They can be really, really good looking. In fact, Yuri, on my email, the email that I had put up there, on this email, we got some people to bite. So some people actually bit on that email and replied back like, and they did because they want to be responsive to me, and I get that, but they were like, hey, how can I help? And later on in the day, they were like, hey, did you get that thing done that you needed done? And I was like, oh. So as soon as we find out that there's a phishing email, we send something out to all staff saying, beware phishing email. But Yuri, good example. All right. How can you contribute to the town? We've got a local roadway safety plan kicking off, and you can click the link in the description below. It'll take you to the local roadway safety plan. You can jump on and either drop a pin or draw a box around the area that you would like to suggest that we do something different. That's your way to contribute. You can also come see us live at Coffee with the Cops. June 4th, 10 to 12. We'll be at Lunardi's Market, 345 Railroad Avenue, and we'll be there on June 4th to 10 to noon. But that is a Special Olympics fundraiser where we're going to be out there specifically to raise money for Special Olympics. And so we would ask if you wanted to donate, if you feel compelled to donate, it's a great opportunity to. All the money that we collect goes straight to Special Olympics. It allows for pretty engaging competitions, but it also allows for well check and wellness appointments for our Special Olympics athletes. All right. With that, we are 10:10, but we're always 10:8 and in service to all of you. Have a good night.